Broadsword calling Danny Boy, where Eagle's Dare was not just a World War II action thriller. It was a brutal, snow-drenched labyrinth of deception, betrayal, and behind-the-scenes madness. Beneath the sharp uniforms and icy mountaintop suspense, the production spiraled into stunt chaos, actor feuds, and freezing peril. Helicopter blades nearly decapitated crew members. Here are 20 weird facts about Where Eagles Dare that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this classic. Fact number 20. What audiences did not see was the hellish cold the cast endured every single day on location. Filming in the Austrian Alps was no postcard fantasy. The temperatures dropped so low that camera equipment froze mid-take. Richard Burton's breath turned to visible steam even indoors. Call sheets had to be rewritten to limit outdoor exposure. Snow machines failed. Crew members suffered frostbite. Every scene that takes place on those mountaintops was shot under near-survival conditions. This was not movie magic. It was trench warfare with cameras. The cold affected everything from stunt timing to actor dialogue. Delays became the norm. Morale frayed. But it also made the film's icy realism feel palpable. That was not acting. That was endurance. Fact number 19. Clint Eastwood was furious about the script. When he first read the screenplay, he realized he had less dialogue than some of the supporting characters. He asked, "Why is Richard Burton doing all the talking?" Burton explained it simply. "You get to kill everyone. I get to explain why." Eastwood's role as Lieutenant Schaffer was built around silent violence. His presence was lethal, not loquacious. But this caused early tension between the two stars. Clint was used to playing lone wolves. Here he was relegated to a weapon in someone else's plot. That creative decision ultimately elevated the film. Burton's verbal finesse paired with Eastwood's physical menace created a perfect contrast. It was not a buddy war movie. It was brain and brawn entangled in blood-soaked snow. But getting there was a fight. Fact number 18. The cable car fight scene was one of the most dangerous sequences ever attempted in a war film at the time. The production did not use miniatures or green screens. Those were real actors and real stuntmen battling atop an actual moving cable car hundreds of feet above the ground. The rig was not built for stunts, it was a functional tourist ride in Austria, but director Brian Hutton insisted on realism. Safety harnesses were minimal, wind gusts threatened to throw performers off. One slip could have meant death. To add pressure, the sequence was shot with multiple long takes, which meant reset times were brutal. Every punch had to land. Every swing had to be perfect. The cold made it worse. Metal surfaces iced over. One missed step nearly cost a stuntman his life. And yet the result was cinematic tension carved into mountain air. Fact number 17. Alistair MacLean wrote the script and novel at the same time. But he was not a screenwriter. That led to bizarre problems on set. Actors received pages with dialogue but no stage directions. Sometimes scenes were built around plot points that had not been invented yet. The crew would shoot sequences, then realize they did not know what came next. Burton reportedly called the script a crossword puzzle. You fill in the blanks and hope it makes sense. The studio brought in uncredited polishers to tighten the story. But even then, continuity errors slipped in. Characters changed outfits mid-scene. Plot twists were inserted with no setup. And yet the chaos created something oddly thrilling. Like the mission itself, the film unfolds with confusion, urgency, and danger. That was not by design. It was by desperation. Fact number 16. The title itself confused audiences. Where Eagles Dare sounded poetic, but few knew it was ripped directly from Shakespeare. The phrase comes from Richard III and refers to the bravery of elite warriors willing to go where others will not. Producer Elliot Kastner loved the title so much he insisted on it, even though studio executives wanted something more straightforward. Suggestions like Alpine Commandos and Mission Fortress were quickly shut down. The poetic edge helped market the film in Britain but baffled American audiences. Posters had to clarify it was a World War II thriller. Even today, people mistake it for a fantasy movie. But the title stuck. And like the film itself, it was not what it seemed. It was not a slogan. It was a dare. Fact number 15. Clint Eastwood did most of his own stunts, but not without consequence. During one icy sequence, he slipped on a snow-covered platform and cracked his ribs. The production stopped for a full day as medics checked him. Eastwood waved them off and returned to set the next morning in visible pain. It was not bravado, it was contract pressure. The studio had locked him into a tight shooting window. Delays meant penalties, so Clint powered through fights, jumps, and falls with broken bones. One particular scene where he hurls a Nazi off a roof was shot in 3 takes. On the second take, Eastwood gritted his teeth and whispered, "Just keep rolling." That footage made the final cut. What the audience sees is stoic rage. What they do not see is the actor pushing past painkillers and bruised ribs to deliver war violence with quiet fury. Fact number 14. The blood in Where Eagles Dare was not stage blood. It was often real animal blood mixed with dye and glycerin to thicken it. Why such a gruesome choice? Because artificial blood froze on contact with the cold alpine air. The color faded and the texture turned icy. To maintain realism, the effects team began importing buckets of fresh blood from nearby slaughterhouses. The crew stored it in insulated containers, then poured it over uniforms and set pieces. This led to revolting conditions. The smell was unbearable. One extra fainted. Another vomited after touching a blood-soaked floorboard during a take. But the camera loved it. The stains were bold, vivid, and disturbing. Burton later joked that he could still smell the movie years later. It was not special effects. It was raw meat and freezing horror disguised as action. Fact number 13. Richard Burton was battling severe alcoholism during production. He often showed up to set late with shaking hands and glassy eyes. His dialogue-heavy scenes required immense focus, but his condition made it hard to remember lines. The solution directors shot his close-ups early in the morning when he was still relatively sober. By midday, Burton needed breaks. His trailer was stocked with vodka tonic and black coffee. The assistant director kept 2 versions of the call sheet, one for the crew and one for Burton's moods. Despite the chaos, Burton never missed a final take. His professionalism kicked in when the cameras rolled. What audiences did not know was that every intense speech was a triumph over withdrawal. It was not just acting, it was survival through addiction masked by cold air and perfect diction. And fact number 12. The castle used in the film was not a set. It was the real-life Hohenwerfen fortress near Salzburg. But that decision caused endless problems. The location was hard to access. Equipment had to be hauled up narrow roads by mule and truck. Helicopters could not always land due to unpredictable winds. Worse, the fortress was still open to limited tourism during production. Tourists occasionally wandered into frame. One scene had to be reshot when a woman in a red ski jacket walked through a Nazi headquarters doorway. Weather also wreaked havoc. Snow melted unexpectedly, causing dangerous slush avalanches from rooftops. Burton slipped on a stone stairwell and bruised his hip. Clint Eastwood nearly got trapped behind a collapsed wall of snow during a night shoot. The castle gave the film its authentic medieval horror, but behind that stone was a logistical nightmare. Fact number 11. The gunfire in the movie was real, not blanks, not sound effects. Real guns firing modified rounds on set. The production hired ex-military armorers to supervise, but even they were nervous. The idea was to capture the sonic boom of true muzzle blasts in echoing stone corridors. Mics were hidden in walls and floors, but the noise shattered eardrums. Burton suffered temporary hearing loss. Eastwood flinched visibly in several takes. In one case, a prop wall cracked under the force of close-range fire. Safety protocols were lax by modern standards. One near disaster involved a squib detonating too close to an actor's face. He lost his eyebrows and suffered burns. What audiences hear is chaos. What they do not hear are the screams between takes, the ringing ears, and the very real fear that someone might not walk away. Fact number 10. Go ahead and like and subscribe because this next one proves how deadly authenticity can become when realism goes too far on set. During a nighttime infiltration sequence involving explosives, the crew used live charges to simulate wall breaches. One explosion fired too close to Richard Burton's mark, sending debris flying. A shard of stone missed his eye by inches. Burton did not flinch. He finished the scene. The assistant director was not so lucky. He suffered a fractured wrist, shielding another crew member from falling rubble. Filming paused for 2 days as the explosion rigs were recalibrated. Insurance paperwork flooded production offices. But here is the twist. The shot with the near miss stayed in the final cut. What looks like a stunned reaction from Burton is real. His eyes widen, his body tenses, and for a moment, the actor drops character. That was not acting. That was almost a funeral. Fact number 9. The film's famous helicopter shot almost ended in death. The scene required an aerial view of the fortress with a helicopter flying low along the snowy mountain ridge. But strong crosswinds pushed the chopper dangerously off course. The pilot fought to stabilize, but the blades came within feet of the icy cliffside. Crew on the ridge began waving frantically. One camera assistant slipped and nearly fell into the ravine while trying to clear the landing zone. The director refused to cut. He shouted, "Keep rolling!" The pilot made a miraculous last-second turn that skimmed the trees and landed safely in an emergency zone 2 miles down the slope. The footage was breathtaking. It gave the film its godlike overhead perspective. But what no one tells you is that every frame of that glide was a scream waiting to happen. It was not cinematic elegance. It was a near-crash miracle. Fact number 8. One of the Nazi officers in the film was played by an actual former German soldier. His name was never listed in the official credits. He had served in the Wehrmacht during the early part of World War II and was captured by Allied forces before the war ended. After the war, he became a stage actor in Austria. The casting director hired him for his chilling authenticity. His uniform fit too well, his mannerisms too accurate. His first day on set made some of the British actors uncomfortable. Richard Burton reportedly asked, "Is this man for real?" He was, and he brought a quiet menace to every scene. His performance was restrained but terrifying, not overacted, not dramatized, just remembered. It was not just method acting, it was history echoing through fiction. Fact number 7. The climactic fight in the cable station was rehearsed 22 times and still went wrong. In one brutal take, a stuntman missed his mark and crashed into a prop wall. The wall collapsed and nearly took out the lighting rig. Sparks flew, someone screamed fire. Filming halted for 3 hours while the crew checked for electrical damage. The set was rebuilt overnight, but the stunt team was shaken. The actor who threw the punch that caused the crash reportedly refused to do another take unless safety mats were added. They were not. The next take worked, and it is the one in the film. You can see the hesitation, the slowed punch, the nervous footwork. That was not choreography. That was fear stitched into performance. War movies pretend to be chaotic. This one did not need to pretend. Fact number 6. The snow was fake and real, and it became a nightmare. The production used real snow when available, but the weather refused to cooperate. When blizzards hit too hard, filming stopped. When snow melted, the art department panicked. They used fire-retardant foam salt flakes, shredded plastic, and even flour to recreate the terrain. But the combination turned into paste underfoot. Boots stuck. Tracks ruined shots. One morning, the cast arrived to find the courtyard looked like a cake that had melted overnight. Worse still was cleanup. Animals began eating the fake snow. A dog got sick. Birds pecked the foam and flew off disoriented. Local officials nearly pulled the filming permit over environmental concerns. The snow looked beautiful on screen, cold, crisp white, but behind that sheen was a trail of melted logistics and a crew praying for real weather. Fact number 5. Clint Eastwood hated the British catering so much he started skipping meals and losing weight during production. Used to hearty American fare, he found the European on-set offerings, cold sausages, lukewarm tea, and bland stews, barely edible. Crew members joked that Clint was training for a survival film, not a war epic. He began stashing protein bars and canned chili in his hotel room. At one point, he reportedly flew in a private stash of jerky and peanut butter just to avoid fainting on set. Burton offered him whiskey as a meal replacement, but Eastwood declined. The weight loss started to show in his face, and costume fittings had to be adjusted. What the audience sees as a lean, lethal machine was partly due to calorie starvation. It was not method acting. It was digestive rebellion. Fact number 4. Richard Burton nearly quit the film over what he called a toy gun problem. The production initially equipped actors with lightweight rubber rifles for certain action scenes to avoid injury. But Burton found the props embarrassing and refused to shoot a scene where he was asked to fire one. He reportedly shouted, "I will not be seen holding a child's rifle." The scene was delayed while prop masters rushed in heavier metal replicas. Burton's commitment to realism meant the props department had to recalibrate almost every weapon close-up for weight balance and authenticity. The rubber rifles stayed in the background, but Burton's weapon became its own diva. What audiences see is an actor commanding the screen. What they do not see is a man refusing to be mocked by plastic. Fact number 3. The film's dialogue was overdubbed so heavily that even the actors could not recognize their own voices in the final cut. The Alpine locations were too windy to capture clean audio, so nearly every line had to be re-recorded in post-production. Burton and Eastwood were called into sound booths weeks after filming wrapped and asked to match their lips to footage they barely remembered shooting. Some of the supporting cast were redubbed entirely by other voice actors due to unavailability or thick accents. In some cases, British actors had their voices replaced with American ones for the US release. What sounds crisp and commanding on screen is actually a patchwork of late-night dubbing sessions, cigarette breaks, and vocal guesswork. It was not live performance. It was post-war reconstruction. Fact number 2. The script originally had a completely different ending, one where Richard Burton's character dies during the cable car escape. Early drafts ended with Schaffer escaping alone and reporting back to Allied command. But test audiences hated it. They wanted Burton's character to survive. The studio panicked and demanded a rewrite weeks before filming wrapped. A new ending was crafted and rushed into production. That last-minute change forced the editing team to rearrange footage and even reshoot reaction shots to match the altered climax. Burton was reportedly relieved. He said, "I have had enough dying on screen for one lifetime." The final version gave audiences their victorious finale. But it came at the cost of continuity confusion and a frantic scramble in the editing room. Not triumph, but compromise. Fact number 1. The production had a real-life spy on set. A hired translator working with the Austrian crew was later discovered to be a former intelligence officer who had served in the early Cold War. He reportedly used the film's military props and uniforms to smuggle sensitive materials across checkpoints under the guise of production equipment. His cover was blown when a crew member found strange coded notes inside a fake Nazi binder. The man vanished overnight and his name was wiped from call sheets. Security was tightened, but the incident was never made public. Cast and crew were warned not to discuss it. What was meant to be a fictional tale of espionage became haunted by a real one. It was not just a story about spies, it was surrounded by them. Honest fact. The most shocking secret of Where Eagles Dare is that Richard Burton never read the full script. He admitted in an interview years later that he only skimmed his own lines and never followed the full plot. He said, "It made no bloody sense, so I just played it scene by scene." This explains why his performance carries a strange mix of certainty and confusion, because Burton himself was often unsure what his character's endgame really was. Ironically, this worked in the film's favor. His detached demeanor gave the impression of a man always hiding something. What looked like cold calculation was sometimes pure bewilderment, not a chess master, just a man bluffing his way through war.